Now, Britt's in the other room, but I grabbed the camera. I really want to show you this part. We're doing these tiny details. You gotta be super duper careful. There is no undo button on this thing.
What was that?
Nothing. Hey there, fellow maker. Welcome to the stunning conclusion of the Borderlands pistol build. This is all foam, of course. We did the foam fabrication build already. We did the lighting video already. Today we're gonna paint it. I have a reference image so I know what colors. I have all my paints. I have an airbrush. I have masking tape. I'm ready to roll, and I hope you're ready to follow along. Of course, we sealed all of this with our Placid Wannabe peel coat. Very similar. Went with a base coat of silver. This is a bit bright though. I'm probably gonna cover up most of this except for a couple of spots here. Now this is, I think, 4 heavy coats of this, and it did a pretty good job of sealing it. Your results may vary if you used a different way of sealing it, but I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm gonna move forward. The first thing I need to do, like I mentioned, was mask off anywhere on here that I want to stay this silver color. So for example, this screw head here looks like it's pretty silver-ish on the reference, so what I'll do is cut out a little circle of masking tape and cover that up. This is a template for making circles of specific diameters. So I just want one that'll cover that screw head right there. That looks pretty good. And then I can go over to my tape here and trace it out like so. And then I can grab a sharp knife and cut it out. There we go, we've got our circle here, and I can just use that to mask off that screw head. Now if I spray paint all over it, that'll get darker, but this will stay nice and shiny. Of course, anywhere that we have lights, we want to mask off as well, so this light on the end there. I want to cover these little LEDs here, and I think one of the best ways to get a little circle, a little piece of masking tape, that's a circle, is just with this leather punch. It's a hole punch, and I can use it to create a really nice little circle. That can go over our LED, and then hopefully I can just trim off any extra. There we go. And it's okay if I get paint down in that crevice there. In fact, that'd be great. I do want to block as much of that light as possible. So these are a couple of different masking tapes that I like to use. This is a very basic painter's tape. It's good for most things. I tend to use this stuff. This is the Delicate Surfaces tape. Of course, we'll link to all this stuff down below. If you really want to get picky with your masking, you can get some of this Tamiya masking tape. It's very similar to this, it's just thin strips. This is definitely my favorite, but we're using the blue on these yellow LEDs so that we can actually see where we put our masking tape. This stuff becomes kind of invisible on there. The grill part here definitely needs to be covered, and this Tamiya tape's almost exactly the right width already, so I'm gonna go with that. Then just kind of place it on there and start to trim the extra. To press this down into areas where it needs to go, a little cotton swab is pretty good. Now I can go in with my X-Acto and cut it right along that edge, and it should make it fit a lot better. And I'll just do that all the way around the edge until it perfectly matches that surface. Now that that's cut, hopefully I can smush it all back in there. There we go. I've done all my masking. Again, I just covered anywhere I want to stay silver or the lights. And then I'm gonna cover this whole thing, I think, with just a gunmetal color. Most of it is this dark gray color, and I think it should be metallic. So I've got some model paints. This is just some Tamiya gunmetal. That'll go in the airbrush here. Of course, if you had a spray can to get this nice base coat down, you could probably go with that, no problem. To paint it and to hold it, I'm gonna use this thing. This is one of the most well-used tools in the shop. Believe it or not, this base was from a project I started like 8 years ago. I finished it, I just didn't use this material for it. It was Illidan's Warglaive from Warcraft. This, if you notice the shape, is that shape. And I never use it, but it's heavy, so I use it as a base for my paint stand with a clamp hooked onto it. To get my piece to stay in there, I need to grip it somewhere. I'm thinking tube, barrel. It's a little small, so I put some tape on it, and that'll hold it, but it is a little flimsy, so I'm gonna support it with this skewer. There are wires down this barrel. I wanna make sure I don't hit those, but that can go in much further than this guy, and now I should have no problem holding it upright. And now I can even paint it by hand and then clip it on here to let it dry, and that should keep it from tipping side to side. I can even paint it right on there. I've got a little cheap Lazy Susan, so I can do all my painting. So all I have to do now is just paint all of that with my airbrush. Get my patented jar opening pliers. These are the channel locks off of my 1991 Saab 900S. One of them, I own 3 in my lifetime, but I kept this one, and it's really great for opening Tamiya jars that have welded themselves shut. There we go. That can go in. The Tamiya paints are a little thick for an airbrush right away, so I have some alcohol here, and I can use that to thin it. I just mix it until it's about the consistency of milk, or until it sprays out of the nozzle in a nice clean fashion at about 25 PSI on my compressor. I can even put my finger on the front to block it and send air back to mix it up. That's nice. Yeah, that's coming out. Good to go. The first layer went down fine, although I think it's a little lighter than I wanted it to be, the gunmetal. So I'll do another layer with some black. I think maybe a tiny bit of brown as well. I want it to have a kind of a warmer color. So I'll add a little black to the gunmetal, and then I got some brown in here. I don't have brown. I'll use bronze. Bronze will warm it up a little bit. You want to mix it really well because it's easy for the pigments to get separated in the jar. Yeah, that's better. I've given my paint about half an hour to dry, maybe a little more. Now these Tamiya paints do dry to the touch pretty quickly, but I found, I did a quick little test with my masking tape. It isn't really bonded to the surface really well, at least not yet. In fact, if I use some of my masking tape, it will pull a little bit of that off, which we don't want. So I will want to make sure that this is totally dry, but I'm also going to hit this all with just some clear coat. This is a semi-gloss clear lacquer, and I'll just hit the whole thing with that, and that should keep the masking tape from pulling any color off. I let my clear coat dry, even helped it a little bit with my hair dryer to make sure it was not tacky anymore. Did a little test to make sure I'm not peeling away any color. We're all good. So I'm going to start with my masking. This is the yellow lines on my Borderlands gun right there. The parts I masked off will stay this metallic color, and then the exposed parts, those will get painted yellow. Let me show you what the masking process is like. Got some of my wider Tamiya tape here, and that'll be what I use to mask off most of this. This part, again, will not get paint on it, so I'm creating an edge along the spot that will get painted. And I can use that to press it into the surface, and I want to get that to line up with the one I did on the other side, just like that. That is no good. It did not overlap correctly, but I can rip some of that off. There we go. And then just gently pressing this down into the crevices. It's really easy for a spot like this to accidentally get this happening to it, and then there's a gap. So you really want to make sure that it gets pressed down into that corner, and then you lay it down like that. To do the next line, we want to have a nice gap there. I took my tape and just trimmed a little bit off to make a spacer. So I can put this down at the bottom, put another one, oops, down at the top, and that's just gonna make it so that the next one is the same width apart from the one I'll do after that, and so on down the line. So these are just literally just to space it out, and then I can carefully lay this down just like the other one. While I'm working on that, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/punishedprops. It's because of your support that we get to work in this fantastic, wonderful workshop, and of course employ 2 people besides just me and Brittany. And we get to make cool projects for you guys. Thanks, of course, to your support. If you want to jump in on the fun and help us out, head on over to patreon.com/punishedprops. You can get yourself access to weekly behind-the-scenes vlogs from the shop. Also, we do all of our build videos a little early, usually on Friday instead of Monday for our patrons, so you get early access. And on those same days, we release extra credit videos for all of our build videos. If you jump in today, you'll have access to all that stuff, including everything we've done in the past. So thank you again so much for your support. Let's get back to the build. Most of everything is masked off. I just need to cover everything else that I don't want to get any paint on. This tool is bonkers. We'll have a link down below. It's a little bit of an extravagance. I get that, but check it out. It puts paper and tape together, and then you rip it off, and you have a piece that you can use to mask off a whole bunch of your thing with just a little bit of tape. Ta-da! Before I do any paint, which I want to do, but I want to be patient, I'm going to go over and just check that there aren't any gaps where air can get through, and I want to make sure that all of the edges of my tape are pressed down to the surface. Cool, let's get painting. The reference is clearly yellow, but I'm gonna paint white, and I'll tell you why. Yellow tends to not cover very well. We learned this when we were painting Paige's horns on the Spyro hat. So I'm gonna spray down some white first, and then go over that with yellow. My yellow is a bit too garish for this, so I'm gonna mix in a little bit of white to lighten it up. And I don't need a lot either, so I'm just gonna mix these together in there until I think it's a lot closer. There we go, that's a little nicer. I can even thin it right here before I put in my airbrush. A little bit of alcohol. There, oh, spill it all over myself. That part's very important. Spill it on yourself. It's the mark of a true master. Ooh, that's lovely. That's like Runt's banana yellow right there. Delicious.
Gross.
Delicious. Hey, are you team banana runts?
Team every other kind of runt.
Or are you hashtag team every other kind of runt except banana? I'm on team banana. There we go. Quick little test on my hand there, and I can live with that. All right, I'm getting anxious, so I'm gonna pull the masking tape off this. It isn't fully dry, so I'll be careful. I'm gonna try and pull it with the surface. There's a better chance it won't take any paint with it if I do it that way. Some of these bigger pieces need to come off first. And then this is the magic moment. Oh yeah. Oh, they're going all the way around, I guess. Yeah. Hey, that looks pretty all right. Let's get the other side. This is, demasking is always so much fun. Or fun maybe isn't the right word. Satisfying is the right word. Yeah. Because it took me way longer to put all this tape down, and then I sprayed it with paint, and then I peeled it up, and it looks awesome. Look at that. And then the last one. The last melon. There. Okay, you know what? That looks pretty good. So let's see, what's next? The star. Let's do the star. I've got to make a stencil for this star. Actually, I need to make 2 stencils for that star. So I'm going to double up a couple pieces of my masking tape there. And then let's do that, kind of position that middle-ish. And then I want to tape that down. I'll just use some of this blue tape. And now I can cut this star out and just make sure that I cut all the way through to the cutting mat. So I cut through the paper and the 2 layers of masking tape. I can also start at the point and cut into the body of the star that way, because I'm going to throw that away. I want the outline. There we go. Our star is free, and hopefully these are free as well. Yep, there we go. Save those for later. Actually, I don't know what I would use those for. I get a gold star. I'm trying to peel away just one of these. Now, you could, of course, do this on a vinyl cutter. But funny enough, I think if I went and loaded up the vinyl, loaded up the machine, did all the cutting, that it would actually take longer than just to do it by hand this way. There we go. I could have also put a piece of tape on top of this to help transfer it. I did not. But maybe that's something you would want to do. Now that the star shape is all set, I can just kind of roughly mask around it, but I'll also get a big piece of paper to cover everything except that. Cool. Yeah, buddy. Nice. All I have to do is the same thing again on the other side. Cool. tell you what, I'm getting really excited about this. The star looks pretty good. We gave this some time to dry overnight, actually. We had to go home and sleep. But now it's time for the next step. And some of these spots here, I think, need to be a little bit lighter. I've got my reference here. So like the sight looks lighter, this rail, this light attachment on the bottom, maybe some of these parts here. So I want to go with the original gunmetal color that I started with. If you remember, I darkened it to make this color. So this is a little bit lighter, and I need to decide, do I want to mask off areas and airbrush that on, or can I get away with just using a normal hand brush? There are pros and cons for both. With the airbrush, you'll get a really nice looking finish, but you gotta take all that time to mask it. With the hand brush, you may get brush strokes, but you don't have to use any masking tape. Now, it also takes a long time to hand brush all of it, depending on how much you have to do. So in my head, I'm kind of doing some mental arithmetic and trying to figure out which way will be faster, and I'll have a good finish on it. So what I wanna do is do a little bit of hand painting on a part and see if I like it. If it's showing brush strokes, then I'll scrap that idea. Get my masking tape and mask everything and airbrush it. Let's see how it looks with the brush. Originally, when I was airbrushing this color over silver, it looked much lighter. But now that I'm brushing it over a darker color, it looks a lot darker. So this is actually not as big of a color difference as I thought it would. So I might mix up a little bit of this with some silver paint to get it a little bit lighter. But I do want to let this little test part here dry before I make my final call, just so I know what it's going to look like when it's dried. Okay, well, this is all right, but it definitely needs to be lighter. I'm going to mix up some gunmetal. I don't need a lot. I'm going to mix up with some silver. Hopefully that's light enough. Yeah, that's much lighter. So I'm looking for a color somewhere in between this silver, which was our Plasti Dip, and this darker gunmetal. That's what we're going for here. I'm going to do a test on the other side here. And yes, I'm testing right on my model, but if this doesn't look good, then I can always repaint this one part, no problem. I will say it is definitely lighter. The brush strokes are a little more apparent, but I think they're going to be all right. I think it looks okay. So this was our first test. That's just the straight gunmetal. If anything, that's darker, which is the opposite of what we wanted. And then this is the one where I mix in a little bit of silver. And it is a little subtle still, but it is definitely lighter. So I'm gonna go with that. And I'm okay with the finish on that, so I'm just gonna hand paint everything that I want that color. Shoo. We've been watching a lot of Bob Ross lately. It's just a happy little grip. Just a happy little grip. And I know I put the wrong grip on here. I know, but this one's just so pretty. There are no mistakes. Only bad RNGs. Unfavorable RNGs, I should say. You can see a little bit of yellow on this part here. Clearly, I did a bad job masking that. No problem though, we're just gonna paint over that. This whole part here is gonna get painted this slightly lighter metallic shade. And now that little oopsie goes bye-bye. Sorry, happy accident. It was a happy accident. So we're coming up on just the final details for this paint job. This one in particular, just this gun in particular, has this weird splotchy, scratchy looking two-tone thing going on. And I'm trying to think of a good way to do it. I want to match it, but I don't want it to look dumb. So I'm gonna try and just hand paint this stuff on. So I'll need to use a lighter silver. I'll just go with the gunmetal and silver mixture I made before. But then for the yellow, I'll have to make an even paler yellow for that. And I think I'm gonna err on the side of making it kind of subtle, just adding a little bit of texture to break up all the flat surfaces on here. I did a little bit of clear coating on everything we've done just to make sure I don't goof it up in the next weathering steps. But before I do that, I want to add these little rivets that go in all of these tiny holes. They're not meant to be holes, they need to be held together somehow. So I got these little pop rivets, and I'm gonna use my little friend here to pop out just the stem from this, because there's a little rounded domed part. That's the part I want to keep. So that's going to go in here and I'll start liberating it from the rest of the rivet. The little collar, this is the part you really keep if you use these for their intended purpose, which I'm not. You can just sort of boop it on the end there. Oops. This little collar thing, maybe I'll keep those and use them in a prop later. But the stem is what we want, and I can just cut off that tiny rounded dome on the end. I have a pair of mini bolt cutters here, and I can carefully cut it without losing it. And there we go. That's all I want, that little rounded bit there. I can add it to my pile. Keep cutting these out. I'm gonna try and put them in there with a little bit of super glue. That was more than a little bit of super glue. Boop, there we go. And then use my tweezers to push that in. Oh, there we go, be cool, we're good. And if I'm in a hurry, I can hit it with this activator to cure it. Boop, there we go. Just gotta do that like, I don't know, 20 more times. Yep. So I swapped to this different pair of pliers. This one closes when you squeeze it. This one opens when you squeeze it. And then the black tips here are just some heat shrink tubing I put on there, so it's a little more grippy. And this does a slightly better job of holding these tiny little things. Now I can leave it and it'll stay until I squeeze it, which is a lot easier for positioning tiny stuff. Put a little glue in. Now I can drop it there, and when I squeeze it, it will drop in place. So if you're having trouble with placing tiny things, consider getting a different tweezer. Pair of tweezers? Tweezers? Tweezers. Tweezeye. Get a whole bunch of tweezeye. Sure we're using that correctly. Time to do the weathering. This doesn't have to look super dirty, but I want a little more contrast, a little more darks in there. So I've got some paints here, just a black acrylic, and then this was yellow ochre. I just want to lighten up the black. I don't want it to be pure black. So I'm going to mix those up here with some water. That's a nice thin wash that we will put all over our gun, and then we'll clean it off. That was the first pass of weathering on one side. This side is clean, and this side is weathered. And I really like how it's knocking some of these details I painted on back a little bit, making them a little more subtle. The final step is that iconic cell shading on Borderlands stuff. Got some markers here. If I had a black paint pen like this, I would use it. This is a red one, can't use this. So instead I'm just gonna use a Sharpie, and a Sharpie will be just fine. The thing is, Sharpie's an alcohol ink, and it's not black. It's actually kind of purpley, and it'll shine that way and not look totally black. Again, if I had the black paint pen, I'd use it. So I'm just gonna go with the Sharpie, just know your results may vary. Let's give it a go. I'm just kind of outlining some of the major elements here. I don't know if I should go in and add the outlines around all these panels. I'm just gonna go do one pass around all the major stuff and see how it looks. Also not fully like drawing outlines along everything. Kind of trying to mix it up a little bit. The Borderlands style is a little sloppy. It's got some wonderful character. So yeah. The reference image does not have these surface details the way I'm doing it. It just outlines the gun in 3D, but we have to be able to see the whole thing, so we have to kind of make it up as we go. But I think that looks pretty great. Well, that was challenging. Well, the whole build was challenging. This paint job was really fun. I love how it turned out. It's so cool. It looks great with the lights. And I think I got pretty close to that classic Borderlands style. There's free blueprints. I made my blueprints available if you want to go download those. They're linked down below over at punishprops.com. I hope you enjoyed this multi-step process for my Borderlands blaster. I sure had a good time putting it together. I'd like to thank our patrons again for helping us afford this wonderful shop and being able to do these really cool projects. Patreon.com/punishprops if you want to get some extras and help us out. That's it for this one. I'm gonna hang this up on the wall proudly next to the rest of my space blasters and call it good. Oh, also, if you want to follow along, all the tools and materials we use will be linked down below, along with any other relevant information like videos on using an airbrush or videos on doing weathering with acrylic paints. Those will all be linked below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been a real joy. You're awesome. Keep it up, and I'll catch you in the next build. So I'm just going to add this bamboo skewer carefully down the barrel. Just the bamboo skewer. Okay. Bamboo. Yeah. So to reinforce it, I got this bamboo. Why can't I say bamboo skewer? Bamboo. 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 Bamboo.
Yeah. I think it's easy to do.
Bamboo. Bamboo skewer.
You just say skewer.
Skewer. There we go. Thanks, Britt. Okay.